What's up, everybody? Back at you again. How's everyone doing today? Want to get right back into the nutrition talk. Briefly, a little bit more details about what I'm doing. I've gone over that in some other videos. The premise of each one of my meals is the lean proteins, the fruits and the veggies. You know, each meal I'm doing 3 meals a day. Each meal I'm doing 2 cups of fruit, 2 cups of vegetables of choice, and up to shooting for 12 ounces of cooked meat, okay? Just to give you an idea of what that looks like, let's take breakfast this morning as an easy example. I start off with the 6 whole eggs, 6 egg whites, scramble them, salt and pepper. That's always delicious. And I really don't notice anymore them not being, you know, honestly, whole eggs. You know, having some of the egg whites in there, not a big deal at all. Gets me more protein and then cut out the unnecessary fat. Today, what I've been doing the past few days is taking 2 cups of spinach. So right there, that's my vegetables. And then taking 2 cups of berries. Today it was blueberries and blackberries. But I mixed it up. It's really whatever I want. And then I use a poppy seed dressing, which is a low calorie. This is like Skinny Girl is the brand name. And it's, to me, even though this is not a whole food single ingredient item, I feel like this is the little 5% that I like to utilize these other foods, ingredients, etc. I mean, I wouldn't likely eat spinach without dressing. Let's be honest, it's not, you know, great tasting on its own, my opinion. But you put a little of this poppy seed dressing, which this particular brand is 10 calories per 2 tablespoons. So if you go hog wild, you know, 2-3 servings, you're still only max 30 calories. Not a big deal in my opinion. This is one of those things that I think will help you, not hurt you in the grand scheme of things. So we've got, you know, basically a salad with spinach and mixed berries, a little bit of dressing. Now for breakfast, I do have my supplements, which is basically vitamins, has some fish oils in there, so there is some fat there, not a large amount, but you know, it's worth noting. I try and track that. I use my MyFitnessPal as a tracker just to make sure that I'm not doing anything crazy outside of what I think I'm doing. You know, gives me some rough numbers. So, you know, I take my vitamins. We also have this superfood greens mix. I'll get some details on the brand names and stuff like that in later videos. But those are the 2 staples, along with black elderberry. I've seen that in a number of immune support supplements, so I just went out and got that on its own to add to my vitamins. So that's the 3 supplements that I'm currently taking. Still no protein powder. Not saying that I will never use protein powder again, because I do think it has a time and a place. But as for the base, you know, we're sticking as close to whole foods as possible. So let's move on to lunch. It really varies, but in the sense of things, you take most any lean meat and they're roughly the same protein and fat. You know, once again, I personally still log it. I find that logging is a good habit when it comes to your food diary. It just keeps you a little bit more accountable. But with that said, you know, I'm shooting for 12 ounces of meat, but in the first weeks, it's a learning process. I mean, unless you've ever done this a lot before, you know, you don't know exactly how much meat it takes to cook, say, to make 12 ounces. Right now, I'm estimating 16 ounces that will cook down to approximately 12 ounces. So I have at least something to shoot for. You know, right now, basically, both the morning for breakfast and lunch is berries. It's very simple. I've been kind of getting blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and strawberries. Those are the go-tos right now. But whatever you want, okay? And I will try and like maybe add different things in. So like maybe one meal is just berries, just for variety's sake. And then when I jump to dinner, 12 ounces of meat, pick my vegetable, and then as far as the fruit goes, I'm going with like an apple and pear. I got the time to sit there and cut it up, you know, measure it out, take my time. These meals are pretty big. So I will say that I'm playing with the idea of simply splitting, say like lunch. If I don't have a huge amount of time to eat my lunch, then I could take the 12 ounces, the 2 cups of each, and split it in half and literally have 2 meals of 6 ounces, 1 cup of fruit, 1 cup of veggies. So you can see that you can take the same exact foods and split them up differently, and you're really doing the same exact thing, albeit slightly different in the way that you go about it. So that's where I'm at, you know. Once again, we got 1 day till weigh-in. You know, I caution myself not to be too optimistic, because I don't want to say have a lesser than ideal weigh-in and then let that somehow demotivate me. Like, we know that what we're doing is a good, healthy option, and so regardless of what the outcome is, we believe in what we're doing here. So with that said, I feel like 5% of my daily diet I allow to be things like, say I have coffee with a low calorie creamer, you know. Those are just things that I like. I don't really need coffee. I do typically during the week switch it up and do some like black tea with some like local honey. I've heard great things about using local honey, especially if you have any sort of allergy problems. So I kind of switch back and forth between that. Like I mentioned with the salad dressing, you know, it's not a whole food thing, but if you can get 95% of that whole foods, and then 5% is just those little things that you add to make it tastier or, you know, more easily consumable, boom, I don't see why not at this point. Because it's not about being strict, it's about doing what works for you and, you know, what is overall healthy. And I think the same thing is true in the sense of, you know, meals. Like, let's say you've got your brother's birthday, your sister's graduation, you know, your anniversary. Are you gonna go? And sad enough, I've done things like this before where you're having a special event and you pull out your, you know, lunchbox and you got your prepared foods. Let's not take anything away from that, because that's some hardcore commitment, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, if you 19 out of 20 meals are eating whole foods, healthy, etc., then I think one meal out of 20 being about 5%, you know, is well within range of you can go and eat this item. Say you go for Thanksgiving, right? You want to have a Thanksgiving meal. Well, first and foremost, think about eating in a way that the goal body you'd like to achieve, like how would they eat? You know, use a little thought process and say, hey, you know, I could have all of these foods, but maybe it's the portion that you go to. Now, someone like me, I can't instinctively eat all the time like that. With all of the different kinds of food choices, I'm likely to overeat. I could use, like, if it fits your macros, if you've ever heard of that, basically it's a nutrition structure that says, okay, essentially eat whatever you like as long as you can hit your grams of protein, carbs, and fats. You will learn a lot doing that. But within the beginning of this, you know, system that we're creating, we're trying to get the most healthy and delicious, satiating foods. Like I said in a previous video, for 2,000 calories a day, I mean, I'm absolutely full after every meal. I have not had any true cravings due to just hunger. And so I think that's a big deal. And like I said, I think there's room to progress. So, you know, my rule of thumb is shoot to hit 95% of your meals exactly like we're talking about. But if you have someone's birthday, special occasion, whatever it may be, I mean, simply take one plate for food and one small plate if you're gonna do a dessert. Just keep the portions in control. And also, you know, if you're big on weighing yourself, I don't know, depending upon your mental state, whether you really want to weigh in the next day, because you know that you're going to gain weight, but this is not all pure fat. A lot of it is water weight, you know, stored energy in your muscles. So it's really not something to worry about. I'm pretty familiar with that. I used to always do like refeeds. That was a part of, you know, any really low calorie or low carb diet. You know, you're going to get a meal or a period of time once a week where you're purposefully consuming larger meals in order to stimulate your metabolism. With that said, we're trying to stick with simplicity here. I'm not saying we'll never do a refeed, but it's not a weekly thing, because if I lose any number of pounds and then gain most of that weight back on a refeed, if nothing else, it's a mental strain, because you're thinking, well, I did great this week, I lost 5 pounds, but then I did a refeed and I'm up 4 pounds. Well, you'll see the next few days, if you were to weigh in, you know, that weight will come down. And I always typically would still continue to lose. So there is a place for refeeds. Honestly, not in the beginning, because you just don't need it yet. You know, unless you've been eating lean for long periods of time, you know, you probably had something that is higher in calories, that, you know, unless your metabolism is somehow damaged, which I think we'll get into that later, you're good to go for a solid period of time. And I think my approach here is going to be, you know, unless, say there's a period of time where I don't have any reason to have one of these free meals, I'm not going to just put it in there. You know, if I can help it, unless my body's screaming at me, you know, I'm thinking of possibly, say if you stagnate 2 weeks in a row, you're weighing in once a week, 2 weeks, if you give yourself one free meal and one free meal only at the very beginning of your week, then I do think that that could help you continue to make progress. And anytime you can avoid truly stagnating, which in my mind is 2 to 3 weeks, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, nothing's changing. The other tool that I like to use is some exercise. You know, right now I'm really big on just walking, because it burns good calories, you can recover from it, and your body is not really adapting too much to it. Like, there was a period of time when I was going absolutely crazy in my personal training days, and all I cared about was trying to get a six-pack. There was a point in time where I'm doing 45 minutes of cardio twice a day, and it's not maintainable unless you're the 1%er or even more of a small niche category. You know, that's just a crazy amount of cardio to do. And, you know, easy to say that when I stopped doing that cardio, the progress halted. And likely, I find that your exercise is linked to your eating. If you've exercised, you're probably not going to want to step outside of your diet, because that's just going to hinder your success. You know, you're putting in, you know, effort here. Why, you know, mess that all up? So I do think there's a place for free meals. And like I said too, in the beginning, we're just shooting for progress. I mean, you may want to do 2 cups of fruit and 12 ounces of cooked meat in my case. But guess what? What happens when you don't have 12 ounces of cooked meat to go around, and, you know, you have to cook for multiple people? I'm lucky enough that my wife and my 1-year-old eats exactly like I do. So, you know, I'm a big believer in cooking one meal. Like, I'm not trying to have, you know, all these different foods. And we have older kids that are much more picky, and they're like, I don't want to eat that. It's like, well, you know, hate to tell you, but we do have food in the house. You don't want to eat what I made, you know, I'm not going to force you to, but you're going to have to make something else. And they're to the age where they know how to cook, they know how to prepare food, and the pantry's not completely empty. I'm definitely not a big believer in keeping a bunch of snacks and desserts around, because not only am I not great at having really good, strong habits to never eat that stuff, but it's just an unnecessary temptation. And, you know, you're only going to have that, you know, will to abstain from something so long if, say, every time you open the refrigerator, like for me, alcohol is one of those things. If I open the refrigerator and I'm staring beers or any kind of alcohol that I like down, you know, mentally I'm thinking, I don't need that, I don't want that. But your body has a funny way of, especially if you've been in the habit of consuming those things, it's going to put you into a state, whether you realize or not, that, you know, maybe you recall a memory of, oh, when you were drinking and it was a good time, and oh, well, maybe I should just have a few drinks. I want to live a lifestyle where I can have those things. I feel like, you know, if you want something like alcohol in your life, but you're not in the shape that you want to be, you're going to have to at least make that sacrifice temporarily until you lose whatever amount of weight, get in whatever amount of conditioning you want to, and then say, okay, now I'm going to experiment with myself and say, you know, I've hit my goal of 220 pounds. Let's just throw that out there, say that's my goal. And say I abstain from drinking all the way to the time. Well, starting up drinking a lot is going to be hurting my success. It's not going to help me here if I just start doing something completely different. But if you say have, you know, a buddy's birthday, you go over there and you're like, hey, I'm going to buy to my goal weight, I'm going to buy me a 6-pack. I'm going to add that in, and then that next week, I'm going to weigh myself, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to do everything else like normal to see the effect. And if you're able to, say, even though you may gain a little bit of weight, say if you're in a maintenance stage, and you can get back to your weigh-in day where you're back down to your normal weight, well, maybe you can then successfully have that food. So it's like, not too much something we need to worry about right now. It's definitely something that we all want to have some of those things that we like in our life at some point. It's how can you pick the things that are working for you, picking the quantities that won't mess things up in the long run, and actually taking the time to diligently add things in, see how they affect your body. Here's a great example. One time I was counting my macros, you know. I felt like, hey, I just consumed what I wanted to, but kept my calories down. Could I still have a good weigh-in the next day? So I decided to go out to Mexican, right? Me and my wife are celebrating. It's a joyous time. You know, I'm going to make sacrifices in my other meals to make it extra lean, say. And I go there, and I go off the wall, and I have myself the biggest burrito they have and a pitcher of margaritas. Well, first of all, anytime you go out to a restaurant, your ability to count and track macros is going to be awesome. Especially when it comes to alcohol, because they're not really the restaurant is not doing the due diligence of actually counting the calories, putting that information out there. So if you're using something like MyFitnessPal, there are not a whole lot of pictures of margaritas on there. Needless to say, even though it was a fantastic time, totally blew my weight and everything off the scale of what I was aiming for and hoping. And it's just like, I learned, hey, that's not going to work for me. Another example of if it fits your macros, you know, trying to introduce a refeed meal, and you know, I decided, hey, I'm really craving some cheeseburgers. McDonald's cheeseburger, triple cheeseburger, man, if they make it right, and if it's hot, it tastes good, And so I was like, hey, I'm just gonna tweak things around. I can throw 3 of these triple cheeseburgers in and eat like this, that, and the other with my other meals, and it fits my macros, right? Well, not only was I disappointed because, let's be honest, McDonald's, half the time your food tastes like crap. And I don't eat McDonald's very often at all, especially in the past years. We're talking about a total times a year maybe. But, not only was I disappointed because the food tastes terrible, it was not hot and it was overcooked and this, that, and the other. But then when I weighed in the next morning, everything was just off. So I just said, hey, 3 triple cheeseburgers, no matter how many calories you're eating, even if it is 2,000 or whatnot, it's not working for me, So I've just got to the point where, I know that 95% of the time I need to just stick to these whole foods. It's hard to overeat that, and I'm gonna be honest, when I'm eating the amount of foods that I'm consuming, it's taken me a long period of time to actually comfortably consume all that food. So, there is a place for breaking down into more meals. For me though, 3, max 4 meals a day keeps the simplicity there. Once you start getting to 5, 6 meals a day, it's kind of like a chore. So if that works for you, heck, just do some math, and figure out, hey, I'm going to eat these things, this amount here, this time, and then so on and so forth. So, that's that on the nutrition side. That's where we're at. We'll have another video coming soon about my weigh-in, and just kind of a quick video, just the facts, what I got from the scale, and it's a great scale in my opinion, just a tool, not perfectly accurate, but it gives you your weight, it gives you your body fat percentage, and it gives you things like your lean body mass, your skeletal muscle mass, all these different things. And that's one tool that I wish I would have had years and years and years ago, because you don't want to lose 5 pounds and realize, hey, you only lost 2 pounds of fat. Like, hate to tell you, but unless it's in the beginning of your diet, which is a different story, say you're mid-diet and you're only losing 50% body fat, your body fat percentage is not even really going to go down at all. And worst case scenario, could you imagine doing all that hard work and then weighing yourself, weighing less, and then being up on body fat? I mean, that is where having the higher protein, adding in the resistance training, even if it's a small amount, it's going to make a difference. And I can tell you from experience and from the things I've heard that protein is more satiating. You're burning up to 30% of those calories through digestion. So, it's going to have, excuse me, it's going to have a harder time depositing protein as fat if you were to overeat it than any other, for example, carb or fat nutrient. So, that's where we're at with that. Getting ready to go out of town here, going to do a camping trip. Been a family tradition for as long as I've been alive. So we're taking the time to pack things up, make little errands here and there, get some extra groceries, stuff like that. But I really want to utilize this time to advance myself forward and not digress. I'll be honest, I know, I'm not going to call anyone out, but I know there's going to be every kind of snack food, dessert under the sun. And we're not even eating like, say, my folks eat. They're going to have chicken wings. They're going to have ribeye steaks. These things are delicious, but if you're looking at the nutritional facts of a chicken wing, boy, it's going to kind of make you upset, because I love some good chicken wings and I can grill some damn fine chicken wings. But is it really worth the amount of fat? if you, for example, wanted to have something like, say, a chicken wing in your diet, the best thing that I can suggest is say, okay, let's have 1 serving of the chicken wings, which granted is not much, but then fill the rest with chicken breast. And that way we're not consuming an extremely large amount of fat that's just going to hinder your progress here. I also do have a large amount of fat in my first meal with my eggs. And that's simply because the other meals do not have that amount of fat. So that's one thing. If you really wanted and you wanted to tweak it and get down to the nitty gritty, you could, say, for example, eat all egg whites in your breakfast and then have a little bit higher fats. That's where, for me, having the app, having the MyFitnessPal, if I want to tweak things a little bit and say, well, I've been doing this and it works, I can tweak this a little bit. And then, you know, if you're like, well, shit, I had 3 servings of chicken wings and that didn't work for me. Or, hey, that worked great for me. Now you have a go-to thing that you're like, hey, I know when I'm craving chicken wings, I can have X amount and still be on the healthy eating, still be on the 95% of, you know, chicken wings are still whole food. You know, it's not whole chicken, but it doesn't have any other ingredients in it. So, needless to say, there is some room for workability there. But in the beginning, let's be more focused on progress, because that momentum is going to make a difference. And so, want to come back from the camping trip in better shape. I know I'm going to have likely more physical activity. I mean, it might be similar to a work day for me, but since it's different type of exercise, it has more of an effect. You know, your body, you know, remember the old school trash man that would hop off the back of the truck and throw the trash in? That's a crazy amount of effort, crazy amount of exercise. And you take someone that's not used to doing that, and they are going to burn way more calories than the guy that does it for a living, because his body's adapted. So, gonna try and shoot for progress. And you know, if there comes to a time where it's worth maybe putting in one thing or one meal, I'm not gonna completely restrict myself, but we're aiming to have the whole food meals, get some good exercise, weigh in tomorrow, and then further from here, you know, a little bit less about what I'm doing, because we've pretty much explored that. You know, other than pictures, recipes, process of cooking the food, it's basic. You know, it's not rocket science by any means, and that's what I'm hoping will make it so successful. So we're gonna get into a little bit of, hey, some guidelines for you if you're, you know, X amount of pound person and you're looking for fat loss, how you can do this. And also, say you're a person that wants to actually gain muscle or maintain weight, how can you go about doing this same thing and just have the health benefits of eating fruits and vegetables and having the higher amounts of protein? So we're going to get into that as time goes on. Updates and progress to come. Thanks for listening to me. This is definitely a little bit more about what I do. And hopefully this will translate to everyone else. So thanks for listening. Definitely like and subscribe. Thanks for all the support, and we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, you guys. Peace out.